Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Hilary. Hilary is here to talk about her journey through years of toxic work environments, how she began to strategize for her future, and the fear and power that came with breaking free from her 9-to-5. She will be talking openly about the ups and downs she endured during this time and the victory she has had in building her own empire over the past 7 years. Welcome, Hilary.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out with us and share your journey. I'm so excited to dive in. I know the first time we talked, it was a fairly short conversation. So I'm really excited to kind of get to know you a little bit more and hear about what you've been through. How are you? How's your week been?
I'm good. Week has been good, hectic, stressful, wonderful. I don't know, all of the things.
Yes.
You're
north, right?
I am. I'm in Philly. Yeah. So it is actually, I think it's like hitting 50. It's going to be in the 50s the next few days. So this is like a real break from, it's been very cold up here. So I'll take it.
Yeah, no, totally. I remember those days being in Chicago. 50 was like shorts and a t-shirt almost.
Yeah. It feels like summer.
Yeah. Now here in Florida, 50, we're like free. We don't go outside.
I know, your winter coats.
We're like inappropriate to be going outside at 50. It's too cold.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Well, listen, I want to jump in. I want to kind of hand the floor over to you and give you the opportunity to kind of go through, your journey and your story that you're wanting to open up and share with us, and then kind of break it down and figure out how you did it all. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. There you go.
So, I guess I should start just by saying it, and this is something you and I had spoken about too. Like, I always felt like I was destined for greatness. I know that saying that makes me sound like I'm crazy, but I always had high hopes for myself. I always felt like I could do it. I always thought I was going to do great things, and I always worked really hard to get there. And I wanted to work in television. I interned all through college to get to TV by the time I was done with school. And I was hired. I had a series of wonderful internships, and I was hired by the Colbert Report, which at the time was like starting fresh, like a spinoff from The Daily Show, to be Stephen Colbert's assistant right out of college. And I loved it. I loved the experience. It was wonderful. But after a little over 2 years there, I felt very stifled. Like I didn't want to be a lifelong assistant, which I think they knew. And it's funny, I've never had a mentor in a office environment. Like it's always been a real like dog eat dog kind of vibe everywhere I've been. And there was one female producer who was like in charge of a lot. She was older, and she was in charge of basically deciding who got promoted and who didn't. And I applied for a promotion, and I knew she didn't really like me. And she did not put me in for the promotion. And Yeah, and I ended up leaving because I just wasn't willing to stay. And, I've been working. I was starting TV, I ended up in marketing. It's all very ego-driven environments. So
Mhm.
when you're working with people who it's all about the ego for them, it's not really a meritocracy. It's really just about like who they like or who they don't like, or who makes them feel good or who doesn't make them feel good, or who doesn't challenge them and who does challenge them. But I left, I went on to do other great things. I freelanced, I worked on a lot of, little projects. I got to work on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions. I met Lady Gaga before she was like famous. She just had a MySpace page at the time, which is really
Oh,
aging me.
wow.
Um, yeah, and it was really fun. And I ended up landing another full-time job at College Humor, which was really on the rise at the time, and no one else was doing what they were
Nice.
doing. Like, this is when web-based content was like a novelty of a concept. And they hired me to produce a series, and then like a limited series for them, and then kept me on to produce an MTV show for them. And the showrunner that they brought in to run that show also just didn't like me. I mean, the thing that I realized is if I were a man, I would have gotten promoted in all of these situations, but I'm a small, petite girl, and I think people have preconceived notions of what I should behave like, or, just be a fly on the wall and be lucky that I have my job. And that was never how I felt like my contributions should be, you know, integrated into the workplace.
Yeah.
So I had I, the other team, I worked with all men. I was the only woman on the staff. I'd been working really hard, and the other producers said that they wanted to promote me, like they wanted to give me a title bump before the show went to air. But that the executive producer who I clashed with was the one who was going to decide like what that title would be. And he calls me into his office, and I sit in his office, and he tells me that he's going to give me the lowest possible promotion that he can,
Wow.
because I think his exact words were, if we were in LA, you would know that you should be seen and not heard. You would know your place. And
Wow.
yep, and he said this to me, and I sat there and I said thank you, and he said anything else, and I said nope, and I left his office and I went right to the bathroom and started crying. Um,
Yes.
but it was really important to me for them not ever to see me cry. I did a lot of bathroom crying in
Yeah,
all of these roles.
I get that.
And then I left College Humor after a few years and went to, I produced another show for Plum TV, which I think eventually was acquired by NBC. And it was great, but I was just feeling very burnt out with TV. It was just very hard emotionally to keep slogging along, trying to fight for what I knew I was good at and what I was doing. And at that time, my now husband, came back into my life. We'd actually met in college, but didn't start dating until our late 20s. And he was based in Philly, and I ended up moving down to Philly with him and being like, you know what, I'll figure out the work stuff. I'll figure it out. I ended up working in marketing for nonprofits, because that was really like the only place that would hire me. Um, and even at nonprofits, like my boss at the nonprofit, like I remember she'd constantly say to me, like, "You're like a younger, prettier version of me." And I'm like, "What am I supposed to say? Like, who says that? What kind of response are you trying to get out of me?" Like, it was just a very weird. I've never had a good boss. I mean, that's really it. I've never had a good boss. I've never had a mentor. I've never had someone who was willing to like take me under their wing and help lift me up.
Mhm.
Um, so I
Do you
left.
think do you think a lot of that is because of the ego-driven, so they kinda have to keep you down so that they're not do you
I
think
do, because I think I'm ambitious, and I'm not, I think for women that's a dirty word. And
yeah.
that's something I really struggled with for many years because I felt guilt about being ambitious.
Mhm.
And now, now I run my own business. I joke that I'm like the best boss I've ever had. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and like there's no shame in the ambition game, like I love it. If I wasn't ambitious, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing now, and I wouldn't be as successful as I am.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real um deficit of understanding in the corporate workspace of like ambitious, like people just are uncomfortable with ambitious women. They
Yeah.
just don't like that. They want them to just, be fine being where they are and let the men do the work. And that was never, ever okay with me. I was never okay with that. And it's funny because then eventually I went on to my last corporate job was as communications manager for a big medical device company here in Philadelphia. And I started off as like a superstar there. Like they loved me. I had so much responsibility. I loved my boss. We got along really well. And then he started dating this woman in the office who hated me. I mean, for no reason, she hated me. And I knew that she hated me because the two of them would go out for like happy hours with other coworkers and get drunk. And she would tell anyone that would listen how she hated me. She thought I was in love with her boyfriend, who was my boss. I was like newly married at the time. Like the whole thing was just crazy.
Mhm.
But increasingly, as their relationship went on, like I was getting mercilessly harassed by the two of them.
Wow.
And it was so intense. I developed stomach problems. I was anxious about going to work. I didn't know if it would be a good day or a bad day to show up at work. And all I wanted to do was do my work and keep my head down. And, you know, and it's also not the first time I'd been in that situation. Like back at College Humor, I was in that situation. Like there was always someone that was just not, I don't know. I just wanted to do the work and that's it.
Yeah.
And then it's easy to internalize, like, have I brought all of these situations on myself? Like, is this me? Is there something wrong with me? What is happening? And the biggest thing that I think the biggest takeaway from that experience, and honestly, looking back on it from all of those experiences, I never let them get me down or control my narrative. I was like, I'm not letting them push me out because everyone was like, why don't you just quit? And I'm like, I'm not going to quit until I want to quit. I'm not going to
Yeah.
let them push me out. Like, I'm not going to let, okay, he doesn't want to give me that promotion with the title I deserve. That's fine. I'm still going to show up every day and smile and do my job and go cry in the bathroom.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
I just never wanted anyone to feel the satisfaction of hurting me because I really felt like that's what they were aiming for. And yeah, I mean, it was a horrible experience. I collected 22 pages of documents that I brought to HR to like detail the harassment that I had been facing, and HR did nothing.
Wow.
Um, and it's interesting because I ended up leaving, like after I left, like a few years after I left, the Me Too movement was popular, and the HR director ended up reaching out to me like during when the movement was first happening, saying all of this stuff has been making me think of you and it wasn't handled properly and I'm really sorry.
Wow. That must have felt so good.
It
Yes
was
and no?
yeah, it was the validation that I needed, but it was also like too little too late. Like,
Yeah.
where were you when I needed you the most? Like,
Yeah.
why could you not recognize that I needed help and you were in the position to help me and you chose not to? Like, that was a conscious decision that was
Yeah.
made to not help me and not support me.
Is that a male
Um,
or female, that person?
a female.
Wow. No shit.
Hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and really, ultimately, the final straw, I got pregnant. Like, so that boss ended up getting fired,
Mhm.
not having to do with me. Like, I mean, they realized he was just like a terrible person. He ended up getting fired. Um, and I stayed and I got pregnant. This was probably like 6 months after he had left. I was pregnant with my first child. And I when I told my company that I was pregnant, I started to see a shift in how they were treating me. Like, I really didn't feel like they were wanting me to come back from my maternity. I felt like I was getting pushed out. And the final straw happened when I was 7 months pregnant. There was an ice storm here. It was January 2015. So this was 7 years ago. There was an ice storm here, and I requested to work from home because the conditions were so dangerous that I didn't think it was safe for me to come into sheets of ice covering the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And they denied my request to work from home. The same HR director, the woman, denied my request to work from home, forced me to use paid time off. And I honestly was just so at my wit's end that day that's the day that I decided to build my business, because I was just like, I can't depend on working for other people and also be a mom. Like, if this is how it is just when I'm pregnant and like need a little extra help, it's not going to be better when the baby comes and like she's sick, or I have to take her to the doctor, or something happens, whatever, like childcare falls through. Like, they're not going to be kind or flexible with me. And I was at my wit's end. Like, I just felt like for years I hadn't been treated like a human, and I was done. I was just done.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. You kind of talking about this reminded me of I listened to Dr. Phil live and his podcast. He has a podcast, and on his podcast, he was talking about how the topic was narcissism. And he's like, on average, like population worldwide as a whole, I don't know what the numbers is, like this is a lie, but like 15% of the people are maybe lower, maybe higher, I don't know, are narcissists. Yeah. Like real narcissists. Yeah. It might be high. That might be a total lie. It might be 7. I don't know. But what was so funny, the point is, he was talking about corporate jobs, people in management, Hollywood, and big cities. The narcissism is higher. He's like, for instance, Hollywood, it's probably more like 50% is narcissistic, and and higher up in corporates, because he's like, these people like to have control. They like to be in control of people. They like to have money with power. Exactly. So then he kind of made a joke because he's in Hollywood. So he's like, he goes, yeah. So, people who are on shows, people who have their own shows. And then he kind of made a joke. He's like, I know what you're thinking, but no. But yeah, people in power tend to sometimes abuse that power. And unfortunately for you and your story, you were kind of the wrath that you had to go through a lot of that and endure a lot of that. I'm sorry, that's not fun.
It's not fun, but it's funny. I wrote a blog post years ago. I actually think it's still on my LinkedIn page, but the premise was how much I learned from my horrible bosses, like how much I learned not to act and do and be like them based on the crazy, horrible experiences I had with each of them. And I listed out like 5 different horrible bosses and the lesson I learned along the way. And, I think, my field too, like what I do is so empathy driven that I don't hold on to it. Like, I don't blame them. And again, I think I learned I found a way to make each harrowing experience a positive for me. And, I've gotten feedback over the past few years from people I have managed and worked with, and especially like younger people. I've taken a lot of them under my wing, especially young women. And the things that they have said to me about like how I've been like the best boss they've ever had. And, I helped them so much. And I credit that completely to all of the horrible experience, like learning what not to do and how not to act is sometimes just as valuable as learning, like only having good experiences and seeing what is great and works. Cause like maybe you take it for granted more when you're just in, like if it's sunny all the time, how do you appreciate the sun? Like it needs to rain every now and then so you can appreciate
Yeah.
how wonderful a sunny day is. So,
Yes.
yeah, so I guess it's also a mindset thing. Like I found a way to make it all work for me.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people need to hear that. I think that there's a lot of people that stay in their problem, they stay in their darkness, which is fine. It's okay to be sad, it's okay to be mad. But there comes a time, like you said, where you need to sit back and write out the lessons that you've learned from all of the stuff that you've been through. I want to ask, speaking of the past, the things you've been through, obviously the lifespan of which you've gone through all of this stuff is vast. What would you consider
20
to
years.
be yeah, what would you consider to be your biggest failure during all of this, and how did you deal with it?
So that's a really good question. That's a really good question. And I think part of part of my answer about like how I've been able to use every failure to become a stepping stone to get to the next level, that like I can't actually pinpoint a failure or say like I would do something differently, because it all led to me being here, right? Like it's funny, like a friend of mine years ago, you know, the nature of what, okay, I'm backtracking now, but the nature of what I love doing is I love controlling and like harnessing chaos. It's why, it has a lot to do with how I grew up. But there's a lot of chaos in my house. And so I'm good at it. I'm good at remaining very calm in the middle of chaos. And that's what made me really good at working in TV. I worked on like a lot of live TV where like you just always have to be 3 steps ahead and like have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. Like you just need to know that, you can kind of control the outcome of the uncontrollable. And I thought that was a formula for success for so long, of like, okay, if I just like have these plans and have a plan B and I can control this, then like I'll be good. And in my early 20s, I broke up with a boyfriend, and like the job was kind of falling apart, and like there was all this stuff that I couldn't control. And a friend of mine who is just like a wonderful person, she gave me this mantra which has stayed with me for these last 15 years. I let go easily, trusting that nothing good ever leaves my life unless something better is coming. And it's that.
Wait, say that again. You trust
Okay.
that what
I let go easily, trusting that nothing good ever leaves my life unless something better is coming.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
And really internalizing that message has helped me never dwell on failure. I don't think of failure as failure. I think of like, I'm letting go of I can't control this outcome. Maybe this is not what I wanted, but I have to trust, because the past has shown me that this is, a bad boyfriend leaves your life. It's to make room for the husband that's coming your way, like a bad job, you get laid off from a job that you thought was great. It's only to make room for a better thing that you didn't even know was possible. And I've really internalized that and embodied that mindset for the last 15 years. And it's been transformative to really go through life trusting in that, and trusting in myself, and trusting that I'll always land on my feet, and trusting that like even if I can't see it at the time, if something is leaving my life, it's because there needs to be room for something better to enter.
Absolutely.
And it's really, yeah, it makes me not don't think about failure. I just think of like, okay, pivot. What's next? Like, how can I use this to my advantage to move on to what's next?
Yeah. I want to dive into this a little bit because this is honestly triggering me a little. And I think that this will be beneficial. So one of the issues that I have dealt with that I am conquering is, to me, not projecting this on anybody else, to me, it's difficult to say that I haven't had issues or challenges or failures. Now, I believe the same thing you believe. You know, all of it has taught me something. I have a hard time completely like disengaging from saying I haven't had any failures or regrets or however you want to put that, because to me it feels like it's negating what happened. Like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was a big deal. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that or you have any personal feelings on that, but I kind of want to touch on that if you have anything to add to that, because I think that that's why sometimes people hold on to, look at this failure, look at this, look at this, look at this, because they feel like if they turn those bad things into a learning experience, into something good, then it takes away from all of the hurt that happened to them.
I understand that. And I would never, ever encourage anyone to like diminish a fail, like feel like they have to gloss over it to not feel a failure. I think for me, and again, I mean, I mentioned my childhood. So my dad's an alcoholic, and my childhood was stressful. Let's just say that my childhood was stressful, and there was a lot of pressure to keep like the secret, like a family secret.
Got
And
it.
for me, that was really hard to stomach because the way to deal with things is not to not acknowledge them. And I think part of why I am so drawn to storytelling is because the more you tell your story, the less it owns you and the more you own it. And I think I learned really early on I was always a writer. I loved writing. And I think I learned really early on to like get it all out and talk to people. I mean, I'm honest, I'm open. I don't, anyone who knows me personally, even professionally, like I'm an open book. And I think that is important because I think the more you talk about it and the more you don't hold on to it and be ashamed of it, the more you can let it go. The
Yeah.
more it's out in the world, the less it belongs to you and the more it becomes part of your myth, your past, your legend, like I I mean, I've experienced a lot of hardship. I've experienced a lot of personal and professional hardship, a lot of emotional stuff. I mean, I've joked to friends like my life is always a circus and or like a soap opera. It's like as soon as you think you know what the storyline is, something crazy is happening and it's like, oh God, there's more. And it's constant.
Yeah.
But the more I talk about it with people, the less I feel like it's owning me. I don't know, the less I feel controlled by it and the more I feel like, okay, I can move forward. And I think that's, like I was saying, especially after my final bad boss experience, I really internalized like, what is wrong with me? Like, what am I doing wrong that I keep attracting these situations and these people into my life? Like, and it's just jobs. And, most of the jobs would start off amazing and I loved it and I loved the people and then it goes downhill from there and I'm just like, I don't understand, like, and instead of holding on to that and making it about me, I wrote that article about what I have learned from all of my bad bosses and the experience and the act of writing it, and so maybe for other people it's journaling. I happen to not be a big journaler, but I am writing constantly, so it's kind of similar. But the act of writing it down and changing the narrative a little and getting out of my own head and then sharing it with people and having people relate to it and start a conversation about it. I mean, that really helps me. I mean, so I guess that's the way to answer the biggest failure question. It's
Yeah.
not that I don't acknowledge them, it's that I try to not let them own me in a way that like I'm just constantly in my head about what's going on. I try to get it out and process it
Absolutely.
pretty
And
immediately.
I think that that's a great compromise to individuals who are kind of stuck in that feeling of that it's being minimized, you know? Yeah, learned something from it, but still hurts. And you're saying yes, yes, 100%. However, we have a choice to either stay in the hurt or learn from it. And it's not taking away, you're not taking away the fact that this stuff happened to you. You're just choosing to view it differently and you're choosing to speak about it and teach other people from your experiences. And I think that that's the key. Go ahead.
Yeah, and every now and then, I mean, even talking about it now, like I feel, like I have like feelings about what it was like to be in my body at the time that those things were happening to me. And it was it didn't feel good. It didn't feel, and it stays with you a little bit. But again, like I can talk about it with you openly in front of an audience of strangers and I'm not crying and I'm here and I'm strong. And I'm not ashamed of it. And I'm amazed that I made it through it. And, I mean, you and I were talking privately a little before this just about the fact that I have two girls. I have two daughters. And a big part of my wish for them is that they can graduate college and start a job and not ever experience what I experienced. I mean, I don't know. I'm hopeful that the world is moving in a different direction, especially after Me Too and, all of this, which kind of happened after I left the corporate world.
Mhm.
But I'm really hoping that the world that they enter as adult women will be very different than what I experienced.
It's a good hope.
It is a good hope.
And we're moving in that
skeptical,
direction.
but I'm hopeful.
Yeah. We are moving in that direction. I agree.
Yeah. Down with the patriarchy.
For the individuals that are watching live, I want to say thank you so much for supporting us and hanging out with us. I do want to ask Hilary, a lot of what we're talking about right now is based around self-development, personal growth. I kind of want to hear your take on that. When did you kind of fall into that? How do you have this mindset that you have?
It's a tough question. I was always different. I don't know. I was different. I was different than my family. I felt like a little bit of a black sheep. I said there were a lot of like secrets that my family was keeping. And I'm sorry, my hair is crazy. There were a lot of secrets that my family was keeping, and I just never was okay with that. I don't know why. I don't know what made me that way. I can't pinpoint like one definitive moment in my life that was a major shift, but actually, wait, okay, I think that's not true. I can pinpoint a definitive moment. My grandmother died when I was 14, and she had cancer, and my mom like hid it from us a little bit. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know how sick she was. I didn't even really know what kind of cancer she had. And my grandmother also like had lost her hair and like wasn't well and like didn't really want us coming around to see her towards the end. So I never really got to say the goodbye I wish I had had. like, so, it was like so
I'm
long ago.
sorry.
I'm still upset about it. She was just such a special human. She was so important in my life. And I think losing her at 14, you know, I was in ninth grade. I just started ninth grade. It was December of like my first year of high school. And I just remember thinking, like, all of this bullshit that like the high school is about, like, none of it matters because this person I love is in a box in the ground. Like, it really just shifted. Like, I actually remembered, like, at the time I was having issues with my friends. Like, I didn't think my friends were being good to me. And I decided after my grandmother's death, I would rather have no friends than have bad friends. And
Wow.
I stopped seeing my friends. I was kind of like solo for a few months and ended up finding my, you know, it's kind of like this, I let go, trusting that nothing good ever, you know, and I found my crew. I ended up going on to make great friends. My connections were meaningful, you know, like it really injected, because I think also as a kid, we're talking about narcissists. Kids are like such narcissists. It's always
Yeah.
all about them, and you
Yeah.
have no sense of anything outside yourself. And losing my grandmother was such a wake up call for me in so many different ways that there was no turning back from that. It's just like my eyes are open and I need to live with integrity and honesty and openness and authenticity. And, you know, life is too short. And yeah, there was just really no going back from there. And I remember I had like all these like inspirational quotes that I had put on my mirror. And
Yes.
yeah, and I would like I kept a scrapbook, and I would keep all of like these quotes that I would find like in my scrapbook. And um yeah, and the scrapbook actually started, it like kicked off around the time of my grandmother's death. Like that's when it started.
How old were you?
So I was 14. I was
Wow.
probably I was yeah, I was 14. She got sick right before I turned 14. And then she passed away when I was like later that year. It was quick.
Wow. Yeah, I would say so. I'm sorry for that.
Thank you.
Um, yeah.
But
Do you go
if
ahead.
it weren't for that, like that loss changed the entire trajectory of my whole life.
Yeah.
Right? And like she's with me always. I was her only granddaughter. And you know, it's funny. She always wore bright lipstick. She always had like crazy nail polish. She had like an armful of bangles and all this funky jewelry. And I'm a lot like her. And I don't know if it's inherited or it's because I just admired her so much that I've like adopted it. But my mom has like a very different style than my grandmother and I. Like I'm much more like her.
Mm.
And I inherited this big jewelry box that she had on her dresser, and like my engagement ring was actually hers.
I love that.
Yeah, so I have like little pieces of her with me always, and I really do think that, I mean, her death was one of the worst things that ever happened to me, and it led to a lot of really good decisions that I made in my life.
Makes
So she's
sense.
helped me. She's like still helping me, you know, like she's always with me, and she's been helping guide me, I think, my whole
Love
life.
that. I love that. Absolutely. And speaking about legacy and stuff, I mean, that right there is absolutely beautiful. The life that you fell into, that or not fell into, but that you worked towards, and the confidence that you have, is stems from, a lot that you took from her. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to have
Yes.
had her in my life, even if it was only for 14 years. It was very impactful. So,
Yes, you can tell. You can tell. As far as, one of the things that I like to talk about on this podcast is steps. Many times we get into difficult arenas and we know they're difficult. We're like, yeah, this job sucks. Yeah, my boss sucks.
been
Got
there.
it. Yeah. But like, I have bills to pay. Like, I have a family to take care of. I have a mortgage to pay. So, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's disturbing a large amount of my life and the hours of my life. But I don't even like, what do you want me to do? What? So, one of the things that I would like to, open up or talk to you about is like, how did you go from, being in this situation that you were in to pivoting? As you said, you've pivoted a ton. Like,
Sure
what,
have.
like, obviously that takes confidence. Obviously that takes courage. But like, do you have like just an idea or a step in the right direction, some advice as far as getting somebody from one sect to the other? How did you do it?
So I think a big part of it for me has always been like having a side hustle,
Wow.
because even when I was working in TV, like I look back at it now and I was like, I was always entrepreneurial. I just never knew how to like where to put that energy.
Yeah.
And like when I was working in TV, so the way that TV works is very few jobs are like, working on like the Ellen show, where it's like every day you're going to the same office and it's happening year after year. Like it's very rare to find that in television. The more typical experience is to like work on a job for 3 months and then you're unemployed for a month and you're looking for another gig and then you get put on another show, or like you're, working for like as a day player here and there. And it's very, you got a lot of downtime. I mean, that's that's the best way I could put it. There was a lot of downtime. And also I always wanted like a more creative, like I just was always looking for like creative ways to use my time. And my first side hustle, this is when I was working at Colbert, I had this idea to like make canvas bags, reusable. This was in like 2007, probably. So this was before people were like really using canvas bags. And I had all these old t-shirts, and I like cut up these old t-shirts and like sewed the like t-shirts onto the bags. And I was like trying to sell the bags. That didn't really go very far, but it was something to do with my time.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me. Then when I ended up at College Humor, I had met like a bunch of comedians who were like, would you produce this thing that we're doing on the side? And I was like, absolutely. And so then like my nights and weekends, I was with that. And like, I don't even know if I was getting paid. I mean, I think they were like buying us like beer and pizza. That was about it. But it was so fun. It was so fun to like be in it, and it made me feel good. And it just filled my cup in a way that like a 9 to 5 couldn't always do for me. And then when I moved to Philly and I was working at that nonprofit, it was actually only a part-time job. So I went through, um, uh, at the time it was Wharton. I think Drexel does it now, but there's a small business development center. I think they're everywhere. Like every state should have a school that does this, and you can go, and it's like through their business school, but it is dirt cheap. I mean, not dirt cheap, but it's very cheap. It's not like going to business school. It is a very small investment. And I did a 6-week course where I went through, like I learned how to launch a business, and I had a marketing plan, and like I had access to these Wharton professors and grad students who listened to me and were like, yeah, no, you have something there. Like, this is a good idea. Or, oh, maybe you should tweak this to do this and this and this. And that started to give me the confidence of like, I could do this. Like, I think I could do this. And I never fully got that off the ground, but that was ultimately the first iteration of my business.
Wow.
At the time, it was going to be similar to what I'm doing, but only geared towards nonprofits. I never really got that off the ground. And then I got hired by the medical device company. But even when I was there, like I took side writing gigs. Like I, would write articles for other outlets, and there was always something I kind of had on the side that when I was ready to do my own thing, I felt confident, like, okay, now I kind of have a portfolio of work to show for it. I built a very basic website in Wix, and like the first like, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that is a big step to understand too. You don't have to wait for it to be perfect. You just have to do it.
Yep.
And when you do it, you'll start to see, it's like, if you build it, they will come. You just have to take that first step in the right direction, or in a direction to move forward. You can't just stay still and expect things to fall in your lap. You can't expect change if you're not doing anything to change your life.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of the side hustle and then taking it full time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm the exact same. I've always got something brewing on the side.
Yeah.
I drive my fiance crazy sometimes. He'll come home from work and I'll be like, listen, I have this idea. He's just like, what?
And my husband's like, what? Not another one. Oh God.
So now I've had to, now I really do though. I have so much going on. So now I always preface with, I have this great idea. Not that I'm going to do it right now, but I'm writing it down in my journal.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of my clients that I work with, especially who are like closer to the startup stage, they get very overwhelmed because they have so many good ideas, and then they don't know how to execute. Like, they get paralyzed by like what to do next. They don't know how to execute on any of them because it's just too much. And I actually recommend having them create a now and later list. So like, what do you need to do now to achieve these specific goals that you want to achieve now? And then what's a good idea for later? Like, it won't get you to your goal now, but it's a good idea and you want to put it somewhere to use it when you have time and like you've already achieved these goals. And then you can move that into the now column and keep like your new ideas in the later column.
Yes, I love that. Good advice. For those listening, I hope you took notes on that.
Yeah,
that's
now and later list.
Yes, that's great. What's the number one lesson you've learned from your life?
Empathy. Have empathy for people. I think it's very easy to think what's going on with someone, or to like judge, and like you just never do. And it's just really important to understand other people. I think that's the biggest one. Yeah. And yeah, it's empathy. It will change things for you when you like truly learn how to love other people, even when you don't like them or don't like what they're doing, like don't like how they're behaving. Like you can love someone and not like them and still have empathy for them.
Yes. That's great. As far as, talking about personal development, one of the things that comes up a lot within that arena is the word disempowering. I'd like to ask, as far as that arena goes, what was the most disempowering belief that you had in your life? And then what do you believe now?
I think this is a nice callback, but I think it comes back to that mantra that my friend gave me, right? Which was, I let go easily, trusting that nothing good ever leaves my life unless something better is coming. Because I think before I adopted that as a mindset, I think the most disempowering belief was that I could control the outcome of things, that I could control what was happening, and that if I couldn't control what was happening, then like there's something wrong, like I failed, or there's something wrong with me in some way. And letting go of that has been a real game changer.
Definitely.
It's really, I realize I have no control over anything.
Yeah.
And that that exact thought is like, however much I felt it in my 20s and like early 30s, as soon as I had kids, I mean, you have to embody the fact that you have no control over anything.
Good
When you have
point.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you really have to like let go of the reins and not try to like put everything in the boxes you think they should fit in,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
not always easy.
I love that you're bringing up kids because that's so true. I have just as a side note, I have a tactic that I use with a lot of moms that I work with, who are kind of dealing with that, being a control freak and having to like control all of the things. And one of the things that I tell them in order to practice is to bake a cake with their children and let their children actually do it themselves. Because one of the issues is,
Brave.
oh, there's a shell that fell in the bowl, or some of the flour fell on the counter, and wanting to really micromanage to make sure that it goes according to the way that you want it to go perfectly. And it disempowers your children when we're continuously micromanaging them. So one of the exercises that I do is to practice. You have to practice allowing other people to do it how they want to do it, and like release the reins and just see what happens. Brilliant. And what happens is, when we regroup and when we come back afterwards, nothing happened. Nothing happened. The cake, part of the cake spilled over the side of the pan. Part of it's on the counter. It went into the oven as is. We're not cleaning up the sides. We're not doing anything. And everything worked out perfectly. Still tasted great. The frosting was all uneven.
Everyone survived.
There's a big gouge in the middle of the cake, but it still worked out. The kids are so happy. And that's practice. We have to practice, like you're talking about, with
letting go.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And when we have children, that is the universe allowing us to practice that, and using that opportunity to do so is key. It's another learning experience.
Yeah. And I love that you said the micromanage. It actually reminds me, a few years ago, I forget where I was, but someone compared parenting, like specifically momming, to being a boss, and like to think about, are the best bosses the ones that micromanage you, or are the best bosses the ones that like help you feel empowered to like shine on your own and function on your own? And that also really changed, because especially like having had so many bad bosses, I was like, oh my God, yeah, like I don't want to be a bad boss to my kids. Like I want my kids to like learn how to do it themselves and feel empowered to solve their own problems. And, I don't want to be a micromanager. I don't want to be one of the horrible bosses that I've had over the years. And the micromanaging, that's what made me think of it. But I also thought that was a really good way to compare it, because we've all been there. We've all been in the workplace and experienced what it's like to not feel empowered, to feel disempowered by a boss.
Definitely. I'd like to bring up what Melissa is saying here. Do you want to read that?
Sure. Such great information. Thank you, Melissa. I worked in an environment that deteriorated through the years. I only regretted that I didn't leave sooner. I know how you feel. It's so hard. It really is so hard to feel like you know you deserve better, and yet you feel stuck and like then on some level, do you feel like you don't deserve better because you're there? Yes. But yeah, it's a real it messes with your head to be in an environment like that. It messes with your self-esteem, with your confidence. But I think also the way that a lot of corporate environments are structured, they talk a lot about like, we're family and loyalty is so important. And, they really kind of gaslight you a little to like want to give more to them, and like you owe them and they're so good to you. And it's like, no, you're paying me for a service. That's it. I'm not working nights and weekends for you. Like it's hard to have boundaries,
Yeah.
because I think too, when we enter the workforce as young people, we get taken advantage of. We work more than work hours than we're getting paid for. We take, because we're like, oh, this is what we have to do. We're getting started. And I think it's really easy to get taken advantage of. And then you get into that mindset for the rest of your career of like,
Yeah.
this is just how it is.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you left, Melissa.
Melissa's great. She's awesome. She was on a podcast a few months ago. So with all of this, through all this journey and knowing where you are, and you've kind of briefly mentioned that you went off on your own and you're flying high. Can you tell us all what you do? We're still hanging on here for those of you that are watching live. We're 55 minutes in. We're still hanging on tight, and we want to know what you do.
So I am a branding and content strategy consultant, which essentially means I help other businesses and entrepreneurs figure out the best ways to tell their stories strategically in a way that positions them for growth and in a way that helps them create deeper connections with their audience. So it's interesting. For a long time, a lot of people are like, how did you get from TV to branding? But really, it's the storytelling that's at the heart of everything that I do. It's very people focused. It's about connecting with audiences. It's about having shared experiences and like people bonding over the love of a TV show or a brand. And I love being able to do that for people. Especially, I work with a lot of women-owned businesses, which is really important to me. Especially because I felt like as I was coming up and like starting my own business, there wasn't a ton of resources just for women. I think it's changed a lot over the last 7-8 years. But supporting women and giving back to women and helping women feel empowered in their business and in their marketing and how they're talking about their business and feeling confident about growing their business is
Beautiful.
a top priority for me.
Beautiful. So if someone is listening now who owns a business, who maybe doesn't do much writing, what can you do for them exactly? Like, who should be contacting you?
So anyone that thinks it's time for a rebrand, or anyone that's launching a business that needs like the foundation of a brand. So like people think branding is just a logo or a website or a color scheme, but branding is actually the story you're telling. Branding is your mission, your values, understanding who your audience is, figuring out ways to, like lines of communication to connect with them in an authentic way. And a lot of people don't do that before launching a business. So I'm there for any of you who are struggling with that. And then on the content side, I do content, but I really focus on content strategy, which is really the game plan for how you can use content to your advantage to grow your business and spread your message and make sure you're connecting with the right audience.
Yeah.
So anyone who feels a little lost with their content marketing or their strategy when it comes to content or creating content, I'm here for you too.
Beautiful, beautiful. And one of the things that we've talked about during this podcast is pivoting. So, it sounds as if, if somebody's pivoting within their business. I know I did that, over the past, 8-9 years that I've been doing this. I went from health and wellness to mental and emotional to time management and organization, all very similar, right? They're all kind of connected, but pivoting and rebranding for all of that can be and also staying true to yourself can be very overwhelming because you're still trying to juggle all the other stuff, So definitely an asset to have, where you're helping a lot and doing a lot of that thinking when we're still trying to like manage clients and, bring in the money. So yeah, I
exactly.
could see where that would be beneficial.
Yeah, and most businesses, whether you're like a solopreneur and it's you who is also changing, or you're like a big established brand, most businesses have a natural evolution, just like people do. People and brands are actually very similar in that, they should be authentic, empathetic, honest, open, wanting to connect with other people, like wanting to connect with people. Like those are good values for life and for how you should approach your business. And just like people, brands evolve. And if your brand has evolved and your messaging is lagging in that evolution, it creates confusion and mixed messages for your audience, which also then means you're missing out on business opportunity and growth opportunities because it's just too confusing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I know,
I've been there too.
even now, literally like 8 or 9 years later, I still have people contacting me for health advice. And when I was doing that, I was vegan. So
Wow.
I still have people, they'll put something up just playfully with my family or whatever, where we're eating a meal, and they're like, I thought you were vegan. Like, I thought you,
What's with
but
this dairy?
yeah. So like people do follow content, and then sometimes they fall away and they come back. So, making sure that you're strong in your foundation of like what you're doing at that moment is really important, because people do ebb and flow. Just like we ebb and flow, people ebb and flow out of our lives and in and out. So definitely makes sense 100%. What does success mean to you?
Being happy. I think I've been a happiness chaser forever. I think I've job hopped because as soon as I start feeling anxious or unhappy, I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like I can't, I don't want to be here. And I'm not motivated by money or anything else. It's really like happiness and life satisfaction and not feeling a sense of dread or anxiety about anything in my life. Which isn't always easy, especially with kids, but yeah, I think I'm on the road to achieving success in that department. So we'll see. I mean, especially as my kids get older, maybe it'll get easier. I don't know. Wishful thinking.
That's great. That's great. Well, the cool thing is once they get older, they can start to help. You can start to put them to work.
That's true.
My son laughs at me sometimes. He's like, when I get older, I'm going to have 3 kids so that I don't have to do anything. Yeah.
Good luck to him.
Because, he's 17 now. So I'm putting, quite a bit of responsibility on him. He actually did the family grocery shopping for the first time last week. I sent him with the huge, week and a half list. And
my husband still gets nervous if I do that to him. He's like, I don't know where it's good. You're starting him early.
Yeah, he only called me twice with 2 questions.
That's
and
very good.
he went, he came back, put all the food away, and as much as it's a thing to do, a chore that's not like gaming, you could see the accomplishment. Like, he felt good.
Yeah. And he'll be a well-rounded adult. Like you're ready to send him out into the world. Like it's important that kids know how to do those things for like laundry and grocery shopping and managing a budget and things that I don't think I felt totally prepared for.
I did not
entered like adulthood. But I think you've got the right idea. You're clearly doing something right. So
yeah, I've always told him his whole life that a mother's job is not to be a maid. A mother's job is to teach you how to be an adult. That's what my job is. So
I say that to my kids too.
Yeah, like he as soon as he could, be cognizant of doing laundry, of doing dishes, he was doing it. I mean, he's been doing his own stuff since he was like 10.
My kids are 3.5 and almost 7, and I make them make their beds every
Yes, you
morning.
have
Like,
to
yeah.
like put
Mhm.
that on them, because that's what builds confidence. And my son is 17 now, and he is so confident in his abilities to be able to do things. It scares me sometimes.
Huh.
He went out and he got his first job. I didn't even know about it.
Wow.
He told me, he's like, "Hey mom, I have a job interview." I'm expecting for him to be like, what should I wear?
Tell
Asking
me
a
more of
zillion
your
questions.
parenting secrets, because this
Literally,
is
like,
amazing.
literally 2 days later, I'm like waiting, right? One day he calls me. He's like, "Hey, mom, I have a job interview." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, congratulations! What's the job?" Like, I don't even know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm expecting for him at some point within a day or two to sit me down and be like, "What should I wear? What should I say?" Nervousness, nothing. 2 days later, he calls me.
I
We're
got
like
the
in the
job.
home together. We're like in the home, right? He just never
Yeah.
brought it up again. 2 days later, he calls me. He's driving, which I don't recommend. Sorry. He calls me. He's like, "Hey, mom, I just left the job interview," and I was like, "Wait a minute." Wait a minute. There's a whole section in between that was
That's so
supposed to
funny.
happen. But yeah, he's confident in his ability to be able to do, and that's my whole thing. It's like, you have an idea, do. You have something you want to do. It's not about talking. We don't talk. Talking, like, it's good to talk. We have to, explain or come up with a plan. But it's the action that's the most important. So
Well, and
yeah,
learning how to problem solve and solve your own problems,
yeah,
and feeling confident that you can
yeah.
do that as they come up, and not having to be like, "Mom, what do I do?" Like, really having the confidence to know that you can trust yourself and depend on yourself
Exactly,
when
exactly.
things get hard. It's important.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Speaking of that, I'd like to close up with a question. I would like to ask you advice to
Okay.
females who are struggling with their self-worth. A lot of times people get stuck in jobs with bosses because they're lacking that confidence to be able to find something else, to be able to make more, to be able to accept a different environment. What would you say to these individuals?
So, everyone has a different way that they have gotten there. So I don't want to be too specific, but I will say that whenever I am doubting myself, the thing that makes me feel best is doing something that I'm good at. Like, doing something that I know I'm good at, that you can walk away and be like, I crushed that. I mean, I
Yeah,
really think, especially if you're stuck at a dead end job, or you're stuck maybe in a relationship that you're unhappy in, like, finding something that you're good at, that you can return to remind yourself of your value and your worth, and know that you're important, I think really helps. I think whether it's, maybe that's just being a good friend sometimes, or maybe it's painting, or maybe it's starting an Etsy shop, or, I don't know. There's a whole host of ways that, people feel good about themselves. And I think just connecting with something that you're good at and that makes you happy, um, will give you a step in the right direction to get that self-worth back on track.
absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any closing
You're
thought? Well,
welcome.
first of all, where can people find you? Where are you?
Oh, I am everywhere. You can find me on my website, which I see is up here,
Yes.
hilaryuncreative.com. I'm also on Instagram at hilaryuncreative. I'm on Twitter, which I think is at hyoungcreative. I'm on TikTok, which is also at hilaryuncreative. Um, where else am I? I'm on Facebook. I'm really everywhere.
Can people find your social media on your website? Is there like a
Yes,
Facebook click and
yes.
stuff?
It's
Okay,
all the links are there.
perfect.
And I'm most active on Instagram and Twitter. And if you contact me, I will talk to you. I actually respond, and I love meeting new people, and I love chatting with people, and, you know, helping them a little bit. Not always, I don't like when people are like, let me pick your brain about exactly what you do and not pay you.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I get it.
I do love connecting with people and helping them, here and there where I can. So if you enjoyed meeting me today, please reach out. I would love to chat with you if you want to continue part of the conversation or loved something specific that I talked about. I would love to hear from you and love to continue the conversation. So definitely reach out to me.
Yes, yes, I love that. Well, listen, I so appreciate you coming on and giving some of your valuable time to us to share your story. It was very inspirational, very
Oh, thank
relatable
you. Thank you.
to so many of us who who have gone through that or who are going through that. For those that are listening live and that are still hanging out with us, we so appreciate you being here and supporting us. For those of you that watch on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so that we get notified and we know that you are here and supporting us and loving us. And reach out in the comments anywhere you are. Hilary is connected, I believe, everywhere. So
Yep.
she'll be able to get the message, or I will be able to get the message. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank
So
you
I'm
for
going to close.
having me. This
Yes.
is so wonderful. I love chatting
Yes.
with you.
Yes. Same, same, same. So I'm going to go ahead and close up. Thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. This community is expanding every single day and it's filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others.